We now move to the creative future of the whole Gulf region. Many of you will have heard about The Line, the linear science fiction city of the future in Saudi Arabia, or perhaps visited the Red Sea Festival or international museums in Dubai. For many states in the Gulf, the creative industries are clearly no longer just an addition to tourism or even a way of diversifying their economies. Instead, they're seen as an important part of their transition from oil-based to a sustainable future. To delve into what's driving this ambition for transformation, I'd like to welcome to the stage our next panel, Paul Owens, founder of BOP Consulting, and the panel he'll be talking to, Sheikh Hala Al-Khalifa, CEO of the Nuwah Foundation, Miguel Blanco-Carrasco, advisor to the Royal Commission for Riyadh City, and Vilma Jurkute, who's executive director of Alserkal, the Arts Centre of Dubai. Welcome to you all.
Welcome everybody. It's a really great pleasure to be here. I can still see we've got our allotted 40 minutes, which is nice. Thank you, Anna. What we want to do with this panel is actually very much build on what you heard there from our friends at Event. You know that moment in the meeting where they went from 50 years to 450 million years? That sense of perspective and that sense of ambition is what I want to kind of capture and convey in this discussion. At BOP Consulting, we've been working in the Gulf region for, I think, 7 years altogether, and we're doing quite a lot of, we're going there more often, and every time I go there, I'm just amazed at the pace of change, but most of all, I'm actually amazed at the scale of ambition, the sort of, just the sense that anything's possible, and a sort of overall sense of kind of optimism, which is a word that was used in the previous presentation. So to sort of just give you a sense of that landscape and what the future holds, we thought we'd have a very nice informal discussion with three leaders from the region, from 3 different countries. We've heard from Oman, we've got UAE, Dubai, we've got Bahrain, and we've got Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So we've got 3 more of what's known, there are 6 countries that sort of hug the Arabian Peninsula and itself, and it's known as the Gulf Cooperation Council, isn't it? So it's GCC we're talking about, really. And all of these 3 people play a very important part in the sort of creative ecosystem of their city or their country. And as leaders, they're very much part of the overall economic and social transformation of what's taking place. So what I've briefed them to do is to really bring that perspective as leaders, people who are looking into the future, people who are really engaging with the challenges around them into this discussion. But before we start, we want to poll the audience, don't we? Yeah. And because we want to calibrate our comments. And we want to ask the audience by a show of hands, and I think I can see people way up there. You can sort of shake your jewelry. We'll ask how many people here have been to one of the 4 countries we're talking about, Oman, UAE. Okay, so this is people who've been to the Gulf. Let's have a quick look around. Oh my God, it's quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah, it's probably about, okay. So of those people, how many people have been to Bahrain? Okay. UAE? Much larger number, not surprising. KSA? Much fewer. Okay, so let's calibrate a bit. So there's, just a quick question. Who in the audience is currently working on a creative project in the Gulf? Okay. Oh, wow. All right, okay. So this is a slightly more, we'll have to bring the level up a bit, won't we? Yeah?
They can critique us.
Yeah,
okay. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to go and ask each of our lovely speakers, and I'll introduce them as they come in. I just wanted to give them a little bit, ask them to give us a little bit of a sense of what it's like working in their city or country, what the sort of overall context is. And I'm going to start with Vilma, my very good friend, and thank you for helping me pull this panel together, by the way.
Of course,
yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
In 1970, the city you work in had a population of 72,000 people. 52 years later, it has a population of over 3.5 million people. I mean, that's probably the biggest urban R&D project in the history of mankind, isn't it, right? And it's now known as the sort of entertainment and cultural capital of West Asia. Remember that audience, West Asia. Good concept, yeah? Give us a little bit of a sense of what it's like working in this teeming cosmopolis, this place that's sort of so dynamic and growing. Give us a sense of the context. Big question, I know, but...
Well, I think also just to mention, it's not only population dynamics in terms of numbers, it's in terms of diversity. When you are creating cultural programs, you're talking to 200 nationalities in the city of Dubai. It's a very diverse demographic. And so tolerance is one of the key policy pillars for Dubai and the UAE at large. But Dubai is one of the 7 emirates, and as Alserkal, we're essentially a cultural district, but very plural as an organization because we have developed in multiple facets. And I'm going to talk about this later, who we are, but just to mention that the moment you occupy a neighborhood and you have 1 million visits and you are making culture in the city for more than a decade, you are growing with the city. And I was actually thinking, when Paul asked us this, how our cultural ecosystem has evolved in the Gulf at large. When we began more than 10 years ago, you had maybe 3 or 4 cultural institutions in the UAE. There was Sharjah, there were no museums in Abu Dhabi at the time, there was no Louvre, no Guggenheim. So we had to close gaps as the infrastructure grew, so we grew together with the infrastructure. And now the ambitions are, multifold, really, because you currently have about more than 40 organizations. You have 4 cultural districts in the Gulf that didn't even exist before. So, and the way the government views creative economy as a key pillar has also evolved. So Alserkal is based in Al Quoz industrial neighborhood, and now the government pledged it to become Al Quoz Creative Zone, and their ambitions are that by 2030 this neighborhood would house 25,000 businesses in creative economy. And at Alserkal, 25,000. So it's a 20-year vision, and their current GDP is less than 4% in creative industries. By 2026, Dubai wants to achieve 6%, and our GDP is around 500 billion, but they assume that this year will be much higher in 2023. I mean, I think overall it's a very growing economy, It's tabula rasa. This is where we have an opportunity to create our own creative ecosystem. And in Dubai, specifically with us, when we began, the West did not know what to do with us, because the kind of model we were building was for our city, for our context, for our culture, for our audiences. And so that requires a very different take. And I think one thing I also want to mention is the way the West views the Gulf has evolved in the past decade. So if you think about key museum institutions, we are part of acquisition committees for Guggenheim, Tate Modern, Centre Pompidou, British Museum. All these acquisition committees were formed 10 years ago. Before then, none of these institutions thought that archiving the kind of artistic production that is taking place in the region was important. So that was a really big shift in the way that we view our artists, our galleries, the kind of creative work and ecosystem that we are building in the UAE and Gulf overall. So we've been through a kind of 10 years of first-time milestones, but I think now we're maturing.
I want to come back in the discussion later to talk a little bit. You've hinted there about the fact that everything's happening so quickly, this ecosystem is growing so fast. But what R&D looks like in that kind of environment where you are working tabula rasa, But we'll come back to that a bit more. But I just wanted to ask, in terms of the ecosystem, you've talked about districts, you've talked about cultural institutions. I think this audience here would be interested to know about where do universities, or where does higher education fit into the sort of ecosystem, and certainly in Dubai and UAE. I'll ask you two that question as well. What's the sort of dynamic there between universities and the sort of emerging creative economy?
I mean, I think the entire ecosystem, if you place an artist at the center, you will have obviously education, you will have marketplace, you will have museums, you will have collectors, auction houses, and so off that goes. And so you build, in some areas you're stronger than others. We have really strong programs in Sharjah University and NYU Abu Dhabi, and quite a few of them continue to evolve, and it became a platform for Arab historians to create programs that don't exist in the West. I think NYU Abu Dhabi, set up by Salwa Miqdadi, the very first masters in Arab art history. So these platforms are really important, and they are growing new generation of artists and talents, and we've been witnessing this in our own galleries, who are signing Emirati talent and talent from across the Gulf now signing so many Saudi artists. So one thing I think to mention is that the Gulf is grounded in informality as well. The way, and I don't know about R&D, we'll talk about it later, because I am conflicted what R&D is or should be in the arts. Because we assume that art is a product or culture is a product. And I think I'm there to argue that it's a process rather than a product.
So let's
we'll
come back.
back to
Let's come back to your conflict, your conflictedness later. Yeah?
Yes.
In the third round of the discussion.
Sounds good.
Okay. This is 3 rounds, by the way. We're in the first still. I'll let you know. I'll navigate us through. So, Sheikha Hala, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you here. You're based in a much smaller country, but you play a very prominent role in the arts and cultural life of your country. You're an artist yourself. You've all read her CV. You've recently had a leadership role as I think you were the arts director of the Arts and Antiquities Authority, weren't you? So that's a sort of,
yes, at the Cultural Authority in Bahrain.
What's it like in Bahrain? How does it all work in Bahrain? It feels like it's a much smaller place. Everyone knows each other.
Yes, you're right. The landscape, it's a small country, but there's so much heritage and history and depth. Even though it's very small, but ancient civilizations were in this small, beautiful island. We have 3 World Heritage Sites that we're extremely proud of, because I believe that being inscribed on the World Heritage List creates an incredible dynamic in the city, in the place itself. The Bahrain National Museum was built in 1988. So I'm very proud to say that our National Museum, all the artifacts, all the stories that are being told are actually excavated from Bahrain, from its lands, from the different sites. We have, as I said, the 3 World Heritage Sites. There's the Qal'at al-Bahrain, which is an ancient harbor, and it's a beautiful start of the Dilmun civilization, Tile civilization. So there's all these wonderful stories that are being sewn together in our land. The National Museum is a landmark. It hosts visiting exhibitions, galleries that tell the story of Bahrain and its landscape. Talking about the arts, there's a very important art, and because I'm an artist and I have a very strong connection to that scene, there's a very important annual art exhibition that's done in Bahrain, and this year we celebrate 50 years of continuing this art exhibition. Vilma, you supported as a member of our jury in one of our sessions, in one of our exhibitions, and it opens the door to visual artists, to artists to come together and to show. And this exhibition is extremely important, one, because everyone in the country there's an open call and people apply to get in. There's always a buzz during that time. And it's supported by the government in a beautiful way, because the late Prime Minister, he made it one of his duties to come to this exhibition, to open it on an annual basis, to support the artists. He knew the story of everyone, and he remembered. It wasn't only an art exhibition celebrating creativity, it was also a political statement, because the entire government would be there. And I believe the relationship between the art scene, the artists, and you know, the Prime Minister and the government and all these officials was quite interesting. And they looked forward to this sort of event. But I feel personally proud because, you know, as a young artist, I was trying to, you know, put my work in the exhibition. I got rejected sometimes, and other times I'd be accepted. And, you know, there's always that buzz about it. But I believe these sort of programs, when they continue and they evolve, they make your scene stronger and they make you exposed more. So I believe in continuing this work, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about, I mean, I was going to ask Vilma this, but I'll ask you first, and maybe Vilma can come in. What about that sort of relationship between government, which seems to me in all Gulf countries to be a very strong force and a very important part of the development of the culture and creative sectors as a funder, as a regulator, as a kind of like a voice for it. The relationship between that, the sort of top down, if you like, and then the bottom up, you know, the civil society, the independent artistic organizations like Alserkal.
Like Alserkal, but in Bahrain, for instance, I was the Director General for the Arts and Culture Department in the Cultural Authority. But what I found really interesting and special about the work that we did is that there wasn't any sort of censorship. So we had the freedom to show, to display, to publish, and that is very reassuring for creative people, whether in the arts or in literature or in poetry. So I remember a lot of people would ask me, so are things censored? Would you be allowed to show this? Can they write that? And I remember, you know, because I've been in that institution for 7.5 years, but the censorship came from within. So if there was something that wasn't culturally appropriate, you know, we would know how to kind of detour. But there wasn't sort of that shadowing regulator. Freedom is really important in the creative industry. It's beautiful to be honest to the stories you want to tell, and to the art you want to display, to the books you need to write. And so I enjoyed that very much. This is something I value a lot, really.
Do you think that's true in UAE as well?
So, I mean, when we started, so we are a private sector,
Yeah.
we're not government. And then we began, we were more like a rebel. We were not planned by the government at all. We were an industrial area and it emerged to become a creative hub. But we always argued for municipal diplomacy. And what you said about the government is very true. I had friends over the other night and they said, you just have a minister on WhatsApp? Like, it's that close, the relationship.
Yeah.
They're active listeners, they're very present, and they take in your feedback and it's directly implemented. And it's really powerful, that kind of presence, showing up for the sector, but not interfering, finding ways, how can we support you? Yeah. So that, I think they ask a different question. Because it's grounded in very holistic thinking. How can we, I think it's a unified voice for the UAE, but also for the Gulf, because essentially, I don't like to be caught up in regionalism or geographies, because then you're bounded to it. And when you say Middle East, many people would not even know what that actually means, because it's a very complex region. But I think what's important is that we are still relatively small, and we are still maturing. And so having a unified voice is really important for us, if we want to be part of a global stage.
Okay. I want to move on to Miguel. You've been working in the Gulf for 8 years? Is that right?
15.
15 years. 15. Oh, God. I've got to do my homework better. And you've worked in Doha, and now you're working in Riyadh. I suppose the most, UAE, Dubai's been through this immense period of transformation and growth. What's happening in Saudi at the moment is quite extraordinary. Not just the sorts of things that Samira mentioned in terms of the ambition of those developments, but just the way it's changing as a society. Can you just give us a sense from your work in Riyadh of what's going on? What are the key drivers? What should this audience know about this dynamic change that's taking place in Saudi?
Well, thank you, Paul, for having me. It's an honor to be here in this panel with Vilma and with Sheikh Hala. So I think the first thought that I would like to leave the audience with is that it's a very exciting time to be working in the cultural industries in the Gulf as a whole. And obviously we've heard from Vilma, we've heard from Hala. The case of Saudi, I think Saudi Arabia started a little bit later putting governmental efforts into the arts and culture sector. I think for many years it was more like grassroots. But since 2016, with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman releasing the Saudi Vision 2030, I think that's the pivotal moment where we actually have an incredible push from the government, great ambition, great resources allocated to many different projects. So Saudi is going through a societal and economical process of transformation, which is very, very rapid. So I mean, just to, we've mentioned the line, but there's also a lot of other giga projects. So we have the line is a 500 billion project that is very futuristic. I'm sure all of you, or most of you, have seen in the newspapers. And they've already broken the ground, and it's actually happening, as I hear. There's also Qiddiya, the Red Sea Global. So there's a lot of very ambitious giga projects that are planning to contribute significantly to the GDP of the country in the next 7-8 years. To give you a scale of the pace of the change, when I arrived in Saudi Arabia in 2018, I arrived to work alongside a very well-known artist, Ahmed Matar. We were working on a Misk Art Week, which was a cultural festival. And alongside different art exhibitions, we actually had some stages and for concerts. So we staged the first rock concerts in Saudi Arabia in decades. And the appetite of the people from all ages to music, to art, to all sorts of creative industries was incredible for me to witness. No? But only a few months after that, after these first small concerts, we had like a 3-day techno and electronic music festival. Middle Beast is branded also, probably a lot of you are familiar with it, bringing some of the top DJs in the world to this 3-day festival in Saudi Arabia with more than 300,000 attendees. So from nothing to this massive festival in a matter of months. So that's the pace of the change that we're experiencing. And I think it's also very important to reflect that the population of Saudi Arabia is incredibly young. We have 63% of the population in Saudi Arabia are under 30 years old. So that's, and they're all embracing this change with open arms. So I think that's really, really important for all of us working in the creative industries. There's an audience that has a great appetite for what we can offer. And I think that's important. After the Saudi Vision was released, we saw the establishment of the Ministry of Culture in 2018 from the General Cultural Authority, which had a lot less power and a lot of investment in different areas. So we have 11 commissions: music, theater, fashion, museums, visual art. So all of the commissions have budgets and they're running projects. So it's a very exciting time for all of us to try to see where we can fit, because there's a great ambition in all of these directions. Riyadh Art, which is the project that I worked for, was also established in 2019 with the aim to transform Riyadh into a gallery without walls. So we are going to place more than 1,000 artworks across the city. We also have an ephemeral program, which is Riyadh. You're seeing some images on the screen. I will talk about that a little more later. But yeah, I don't want to take more time, but it's a very exciting time in Saudi. The country is going through a radical social and economic transformation. The population is very young, and there's a great focus on cultural and creative industries.
There's a story going around. It might be a bit of a myth. I was sharing this with Miguel last night, which is that when the consultants first presented the public art strategy to the Crown Prince, he basically said, I don't think this is ambitious enough, and I want some KPIs. I want 1,000 artworks across Riyadh in the next 5 years. And I'm not saying that to support his particular management technique. I'm just saying it to give you an illustration of the sort of scale of ambition and the pace of change. But anyway, just a quick note. I mean, what you work for is called the Royal Commission of Riyadh City.
That's correct.
And just tell us a bit about, because I think it's an interesting reflection of the sort of the way the system works in Saudi, what a Royal Commission is.
So the Royal Commission for Riyadh City is better known by its acronym, RCRC, no? Otherwise it will be too long to say all the time. It's basically the London City Hall. So we have the same responsibilities as the London City Hall. And so from urban planning, from managing the infrastructure, the metro, and a great emphasis on arts and culture as well. We, in the department that I work on, Riyadh Life, we are responsible for tourism, entertainment, arts and culture, and sports, and including public art. So that's the array of responsibilities. But we have a lot of other institutions that also are part of this development. So we have Ministry of Culture, we have the General Entertainment Authority, Ministry of Tourism. So all of these different agencies, they have projects that work together towards this, meeting those objectives in the vision.
Okay. Right, so I'd now like to ask you all to just talk a little bit about your practice, about what you, I mean, we've given a bit of a sense of the overall landscape across the 3 countries or cities. Just a bit about your practice and where R&D fits into that, or where you think that how R&D works its way out in your particular context. And then once we've done that, we'll come around to Vilma's thing about R&D and whether it, what it actually is. But in terms of what you're doing, the Nuwah Foundation, that's a relatively new thing that you've set up and you're working on.
Absolutely. It's I think, the most exciting chapter. So, I come from the world of museum and education and arts and culture, and now I'm setting up a philanthropy foundation, which is called Nuwah Foundation. And the mandate is incredible because when you start from scratch, you have a blank canvas and you can create. And it was given to me to look after and to create the mandate for this institution that's linked to an investment bank in Bahrain called GFH. Anyway, so Nuwah started, and Nuwah in Arabic means seed or the start. So I thought that this name allows for growth. And it's almost like seeing a baby grow. So I'm super, sorry if I'm smiling all the time because I feel that it's something I'm very proud of. The mandate is very interesting because it supports creative industries and culture. It supports environment, mental health issues, knowledge. And each one of these chapters will have its own project, will have its own subject, and we work through the MENA region and North Africa. So for me, the landscape is very important. I believe that our region has so many stories to hold on to. It's incredible to see the big concerts happen in Riyadh and, the pop, the rock and everything. And I know this is important in exposing and showing and sharing, but in my heart, I'm a firm believer of holding on to the essence of, what makes us unique, the characters of our cities and how they can be protected, and then how we can grow them in a creative context. So as beautiful as having that, I would love to have also, I'm just talking out loud, but I feel there is an importance in holding on to the music from our region, to support it, to allow the traditional music to be more developed, to be more exposed. In Bahrain, with the Pearling Path, which is a World Heritage Site, that's the first open museum, 3.5 kilometers, telling the story, preserving heritage homes, telling the story of people that worked in the sea trade. Pearling was like the backbone of our society in Bahrain. And through the Pearling Path, through the music that accompanies people that worked in that industry, and you see them today now. Yes, it's inscribed under UNESCO, there is preservation of these homes, but the stories are really important. And then how can young artists, young creatives use these themes for their work? And then the work that will develop is something so unique to your land. Yeah. I believe this is really important. I've always wanted to see Fjiri, which is a form of music, and it's fantastic. It's chants that are mesmerizing. Please Google Fjiri, and we inscribed it at the UNESCO Intangible World Heritage List. And it's super important, it's super beautiful. And if we had a concert of Fjiri with blues, for instance, and we did like a fusion between them, magic can happen, sparks, it's so powerful. I believe that, yes, the region is evolving. There's a lot of creativity and development and government interest in creating museum platforms. But important, yes, but let's hold on to the essence of who we are and how we're different. We're so close, but we're different.
It sounds to me like in your practice that bringing, making the traditional culture and arts, bringing it to life in a contemporary context is what you're all about, and that's where the innovation sits for you.
That's where the innovation sits, and I believe, being now working on Nuwah Foundation and allowing it to grow and to, put a mark in these incredible, cities around the region. I think the work can be broader, and it will be, very effective. It will touch a lot of people's lives, and I feel this is what we want to do.
We wish you well with it. I hope you meet some great people
today. I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will.
Vilma, slightly running out of time, to my great surprise. But you've given people a little bit of a taste about what you do with Alserkal, but I mean, you're multidimensional. You're kind of like almost like a sector development force, aren't you? The different things that you do. Just say a few words about your practice and just, what you're doing is kind of R&D in a kind of urban social context, isn't it?
So Alserkal, okay, so maybe there are a few things I want to reference. I mean, all of us in the region are in a state of negotiation when it comes to our identity. But what I mentioned earlier, we created our own model, and without seeking any validity from the West. It's really important. I mean, I always reference Dipesh Chakrabarty's quote from Provincializing Europe, where he said, I feel like we're stuck in the waiting room of history. Today's new generation is not there. They have exited that waiting room. They have claimed their positionality in artistic practice, in research, in innovation, and we bear witness to that. So Alserkal, I mean, it's a very plural organization. It lives in the form of a neighborhood where we have about 80 pioneers in the arts, so really disruptors in creative industries who had first-time idea and became very successful. And really history leaders. I mean, I think what we're all doing is history making, and that's quite motivating. But then we are a content producer. We produce more than 500 events a year. We collectively represent 353 artists. Our galleries are internationally known and present. So it was always the idea of how can we export our talent and not import talent in ways that we work. And then we also have Alserkal Arts Foundation. We are committed to multidisciplinary research that is pertinent to our region. And we do that through residency programs, research grants, artistic production. And then we have Alserkal Advisory, which is our kind of recent addition, which allows us to work with partners globally to actually share our expertise through strategic cultural production projects or strategy for new or existing cultural assets. Okay. And so that's essentially who we are. My issue with research and development, I mean, when someone tells me this, it makes me think of a corporate, or it makes me think that the process is so structured. We're going to research, we're going to develop, and here's the product. I have a problem with that, because I really think that as an institution today, we live in a multi-crisis world. We have to be extremely agile and responsive. And everything we do, responsibility is not arbitrary. If you're making history in the world of Anthropocene, you're faced with so many political challenges. As an art organization, you have a bigger duty to deliver than just an exhibition, because we face humanitarian crisis as a constant now. So I think that element that responsibility is not arbitrary is really important. And this is why you have to always make research-informed decisions. So R&D should be part of your daily life. It's not a process that produces a product. And arguably, you know, if you think of cities, if you think of neighborhoods or cultural institutions, it's not synonymous with the built environment. It's the process that matters. What's the in-betweenness that occurs? What kind of transformations did you create for youth and other members of your society by creating a sense of belonging? So the measures of success really matter as we shape cultural institutions, especially in our context where we are making history.
Okay. That's almost worth a separate session to sort of explore that, but we haven't got time because you've only got 5 minutes. But Miguel, I want to give you a chance just to talk a little bit about what you were doing particularly with the Nuwah Festival, because that's an innovation. Just the fact it's existing in Saudi is innovation, but also quite innovative in terms of an arts program. And there were some images flashing by earlier, which I forgot to mention, of some of the installations and artworks as part of that. But just give us a sense of that and how you see R&D fitting into that.
Sure, thanks, Paul. I think for us, R&D is defining how do we become relevant to our audiences, no? And in this particular case, I think for us, the key priority is the community in Riyadh. How do we make ourselves relevant to the community in Riyadh? And when I arrived on the project in 2019, when we were thinking, it's like, what is New Riyadh? What does the festival look like? Why are we doing this? So we looked at the other light festivals around the world, contemporary art and light festivals around the world, and we saw that a lot of those light festivals, their purpose was to activate the night economy, because that's the purpose of those in Europe. But that was not the purpose for us, because, I mean, in Riyadh in November, this is high season, and also the night economy, the city comes alive at night when the sun goes down, because it's when the heat allows us to go out in a restaurant and enjoy our time. So that wouldn't apply. Also, most of the festivals had, they were on pedestrian city centers. And Riyadh, for those who know Riyadh, for those who don't, it's like a very large city with 60 kilometers long, 40 kilometers wide. Everybody uses the car to go everywhere, no? So that also presented some challenge. So how can we become relevant? So for us, the answer was, let's actually take over the city. Let's not just have one place. Let's go to, we went to 13 locations in 2021 on the first edition, 40 locations last year, 2022. So we literally took over the city. So no matter where you live, you will run into the festival. And also we have a population that is, they have not been exposed to contemporary art for many, many years. No? So it's not a very sophisticated audience in most cases. So for us, the medium of light was also an advantage. So let's use light, which is a very universal medium. Everybody understands light. We are born into, most of us, into light. We gather around the fire to tell stories. It's like something very, very primal, no? The light. And everybody can understand, no matter how many layers an artwork can have. The first layer is that it looks really nice, and people, oh, that looks fantastic. Then maybe it's a very deep data generative work, or maybe there's a really deep meaning into it. But we have different layers so we can reach a much wider audience. So for us, that was really important. Also, it was really important to work with technology and at the intersection between art and technology. So we've worked with artists working with VR, with AR, with data generative, with AI artists. We've placed artworks on the top of the highest building in the city, and with drones as well. We strive to push the boundaries of what can be done with drones and drone choreographies. And in the process, we gained 8 Guinness World Records, which for some people means more than for others, but for us, it really helped us with our marketing in reaching to those audiences that might not necessarily come to a contemporary art gallery, but that they feel proud that their city is doing something so meaningful. And we've been working with Vilma and Vilma's team to reach to the community for the past 2 years, with more than 1,000 community engagement activities and talks and workshops, and engaging a lot of citizens of Riyadh as apprentices or as ushers of the festival. I don't want to take more time, but I mean, I hope that helps to give a glimpse into what we do at New Riyadh.
Okay, thank you. It's always interesting, isn't it, when you do these panels, how time is funny. Like, literally, we've got 1 minute left, so I'm going to wrap up. Yeah? I'll try and wrap up. So I hope that this panel's given you sort of an overview and maybe a little bit of insight into what's going on in the Gulf. I think if I was going to come away with just an overall thought, just from what all three of you have said, that is that research and innovation in the worlds that you're working in is actually a very meaningful concept, because if you like, you've got such a big job that you're doing around the economic and social transformation of the context you're working in, that everything you do is a kind of form of research and development, a process, if you like. And it's very, very real, and it's very, very serious. It's not separate. It's not academic, if you like. I mean academic in the descriptive word, not the institutional word. I just want to thank all three of you, Vilma, Sheikh Hala, Miguel, for coming to London, coming here to be with us, and for sharing your perspectives and your stories with us. And I hope all of you will take the time to come and meet our three speakers, because I think there's a sort of breakout session, or there's a little networking opportunity, but I'm sure you'd love to meet some people. I want to say a special thank you to Vilma for helping me organise the panel, and also for surviving the terrible London bug and being here. Thank you very much.